Before you start, make sure that you have paper towel underneath your paper so we can paint right off the edge and not get our tables dirty at home. We're going to paint our auroras today, and we're going to start with yellow because that's our lightest color, and we're going to kind of mix it with some green in a minute. But I'm going to make a little swoopy line. That's going to be my aurora in the sky. Your line can go any direction you want it to go. It can be a straight line, a curved line. It can double back on itself. It doesn't really matter how you make your line or how much of the page you take up drawing or painting your line. What's going to be important for this particular lesson is the order of the colors. So your line can go any way you want it. So go ahead and paint a fun yellow line. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to my green here in just a second. And when I do, I want you to notice that first I'm cleaning my brush before I start my next color because I don't want any yellow to get into my green. And second, when I do paint my green, I'm going to paint it really close, almost on top of the yellow, because I want them to mix together. I want them to start bleeding. Remember, in watercolor, bleeding means when two colors are put next to each other and they kind of start mixing on their own. So you can see I'm going really close, and I'm already getting some nice bleeding from that yellow into the green. You have a lot of really fun greens. You could use every single one of your greens for this part if you wanted, or you could just pick one that you really like. So the second color is green because we want it to blend well with the yellow. I'm just pulling some of that yellow down into the green to give it a fuzzy look at the bottom, kind of like how it would really look if it was aurora in the sky. And then I'm going to start on my third color, and the third color is blue. And you can use all of your blues or one or two, it doesn't matter. It's up to you. I'm going to start with my lightest blue, and I'm going to end with my darkest blue. So I've started adding some darker blue now. We have some really lovely blues on our palette. We've got some midnight blues and some medium blues. When I'm done with the blue, I'm going to add some purple, and I'll start with the darker purple. And you can see what I'm pointing to right now is my brush needs more water and more paint. If your brush starts to look a little bit splayed out, or your paint isn't smooth, like right now you can see my paint stopped being smooth, that's when you need to pick up a little more paint, sometimes a little more water. So after that blue, I'm going to move into my dark purple, and from my dark purple I'm going to go to my purplish pink, because all of those colors will bleed into each other, and where they touch each other it's going to look really pretty, and it's going to create a new color. That's the reason we're doing this in order. If you, for example, put purple next to yellow, what would happen is the red that's in that purple would fight with the yellow and it would want to make orange, but it would also fight with the blue and it would want to make brown. So that's how you end up with muddy colors. When you start crossing over with your warms and your cools, you're going to create those browns, and sometimes that's great. You can make some really beautiful, lovely browns, and other times the browns kind of come out looking more like a greenish brown and not quite as flattering. And moving on to my lighter purple now, I'm going to put that right next to the really dark purple, and that's going to make a lovely kind of light color, and where they mix they'll create a third color, kind of a purplish pink. And the very last color I'm going to use is my pink. Now you'll notice that I didn't paint anything on the lower part of the painting. I left a couple inches blank. That's because next week we are going to draw a little silhouette of a forest down there, and I wanted to leave some white paper there. Now if you painted your whole paper, you know what, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't, because you can color over that next week when your paint's dry. It's not a big deal, so don't feel bad if you didn't leave a little strip down there. It is not that important. It's better to have more coverage on this lesson, okay? I'm going back into my painting now, and I'm just making some of my colors darker. I felt like some of them were on the light side, and I wanted them to have a little more pop and be a little bit bolder. And you can do that too if you want. Just make sure that you are rinsing your brush in between each color. And if you forget to do that, and I forget to do that sometimes too, if you get some paint on a color that shouldn't be there on your palette, like if you get some green in your yellow, or if you get some pink in your blue, if you just take a little paper towel and dab that little circle of paint very gently, it'll probably lift that color up. I'm going to hold my paint vertically for a minute and let some of my colors drip or slide down my painting, just to have some additional blending. You know, these aren't the best brushes in the world that we're using, and so this is a way we can have our paint blend a little bit. And you see I've got some nice little drippy lines there that look like an Aurora Borealis. It looks pretty, but I have some areas now that look a little bit too light. So I'm going to go back in here and add just a little bit more yellow to give it some pop. But that's a fun thing if you want to try it. But please make sure you have a paper towel underneath your painting if you're going to hold it vertically like that and let it drip, because you don't want it to drip on your nice tables at home. When you're all done with your painting, let it air dry and then put it in a safe place. Remember, we need this painting for our lesson next week because we're going to draw on top of it. All right? So keep it somewhere safe so you don't forget where it's at for next week. I just want to remind you guys that you will need to leave your art kit paints out to dry. If you look at my kit right now, my browns and my peach and my blacks, they don't look shiny because they don't have water in them. But the colors that I use today, blues, greens, and purples, have kind of a shine to them. Let them dry so they look like the browns and the peach and the black, so they're nice and flat. Then you can snap them back in your art kit and put them away. It may take a while for them to dry. They might need to dry overnight. All right, save that piece of artwork, and I'll see you next week.